Okay, in accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this meeting in a hybrid model, both virtually and in person. The Cemetery Committee is conducting this meeting on April 6, 2022 at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Zoom platform and in person in accordance with the town's policy directive and guidelines issued on April 1st, 2020 and amended on May 7th. If you are recognized, please state your name and address. This meeting is being recorded. Okay, A1 and A2 called to order. I, Leo Carroll, hereby call this meeting to order. All committee votes will be taken via roll call. We will start with the attendance roll call on the committee members. When I announce your name, please reply. Brian Davison.
Present.
Rebecca Purcell.
Present.
Rod Rydell.
Present.
Jerry Susi.
Present.
Leo Carroll. Present. Okay, next is, do we want to introduce the staff too, or is that necessary? No, okay, all right. A3, deed signing. I just finished signing 3 deeds for Tish, and that completes item A3. A4, review of calendar, future proposed meeting dates. There is a proposed meeting date for May 4th, but I would like to request, if there's no objections, we could push that back a week. I will unfortunately not be in town that day, and I won't be back until the 7th. So if someone says they can't make it, then I'll just, I will just, not be absent from the meeting. But if there are no objections, could we push it back?
Fine with me. I don't have my calendar, but I see it.
Yeah, I don't have my calendar, but I don't see a problem with it.
All right.
Fine with the work.
I'll let the other members speak first.
And Jerry is.
Anyone
muted.
else have any objections?
That's fine with me, sure.
Fine with me.
I do have a note. I have a conflict. I attend Public Works Commission meetings on the second Wednesday of every month. So I could, obviously Tish and Justine would be here, and I could have possibly Eric Shaw sit into my place.
If you don't mind,
If you're
yeah.
okay with that.
I'm okay with it. You are, yeah. Thanks for offering, great.
So what's the date?
So now the date will be, well, now you asked me a tough math question here. May 4th plus 7
So
is
the 11th.
The 11th.
May 11th, yeah.
I would also note, just kind of looking forward a couple of months, typically, the committee doesn't meet in July and August because there's a lot of vacations taken. So I don't know in discussion now, but we'll be making sure we keep that in mind where we're developing the agendas for May's meeting and June's meeting to cover any topics that we might need to cover to get us through the summer. If the committee wishes to continue on with that.
Okay, that sounds good. And I tell you, I really like this 4 o'clock in the afternoon meeting. It's much better than coming out at night. I've reached that point where I'm kind of well known for being able to drive after dark. And I just don't know how much longer this is going to continue. Okay, enough shenanigans. Okay, so May 11th at 4 o'clock, same format as we got right here. And unfortunately, Aaron will not be here, but there'll be someone in filling in for him. Okay, A5, approval of minutes from March 2nd, 2022. So let me just read it. Review approval of minutes, cemetery committee. Any comments? I will entertain a motion to approve these minutes, but are there any comments? That's where we start. Oh. I see Jerry's rocking in his rocking chair, so that just makes me say no.
With that, Mr. Chair, I'll move to accept the minutes of March 2nd, 2022 as drafted.
I second.
Okay, great. Okay, let's have a roll call to accept the approval of the minutes, and that's Brian Davidson.
Aye.
Rebecca Purcell.
Aye.
Rod Rydell.
Aye.
Leo Carroll. Oh, no, Jerry Susi.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Okay, next, discussion of possible action items on agenda. D1, staff report, and there's no vote needed on this. So Aaron, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Thank you, Leo. Aaron McCloskey, Highway and Ground Superintendent. So during the month of March, we had 11 full burials and we sold 11 single grave lots. Some of the updates on a couple of projects we're working on. I won't cover anything that we're going to cover as an agenda item, such as the stone walls, but a couple of things. We did have a large tree that came down. We had a large tree that came down a month and a half ago. And we had damaged 2 headstones and a stone step in the cemetery. Those were repaired this month. Also, we did, we'll actually just need,
I'm going to attempt to speak here.
we're going to try to share the photo, give everyone a can everyone see the photo here? So it was a large oak tree that appeared to be in decent health. And actually, after what happened, the root system failed. And after kind of uprooted there, you can see near the motor vehicle, the top right of the photo, all the root system was completely rotted out. The tree fell. Tish and Park and Tree crew cleaned that tree up within a couple of hours of it falling. And we had a contractor come in and repair 2 of the headstones that were damaged when that tree came down.
I'd like to point out on that, where you can see the red stone, gravestones in front of the town, the car there. See where the car is? See those stones? The first one on the left is the first person buried in that portion of Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. So I'm going to guess that if we had been able to do, count the ring lines on that was probably there in 1855. That'd be my guess. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds feasible.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're continuing to work on the mapping program. We hope to have that out and available for public in May. We have a meeting with the vendor tomorrow, actually, to work through a couple of items and look to have something to share with the group next month.
Aaron, can I hate to interrupt, but one of the couple of items, I'll tell you what I'm most concerned with is that we continue to have the town-owned properties, not the private burial lots, appear on the final map, so we can figure out where we can, plant trees and things like that. That's not one of the issues for discussion, is it?
No,
Okay,
no,
that's all I'm working on. Thank you.
absolutely. Yeah, I think we're working through some of the data and that was, digitally uploaded to the system, and it's, and making sure that it's accurate as well.
Yeah.
So that's mainly what we're working through some mapping.
It's
And that's, I don't know, anything else to say?
No, just basic spring cleanup stuff. I intend starting next week. I've been working that. It's good. No, that's spring stuff. Making needs loving.
Yeah.
Tish been doing a lot of work up at Old Hill this week.
Wow, yeah.
I'm not worried about Tish being busy, I can tell you that, but yeah, but it's interesting. I was walking in back, through the swampy area, and the tree crew was out there, and they hired people to work summers for them. They put on a class on cutting how to use a chainsaw. So there was some trees coming down back there.
Yeah, that's actually a chainsaw safety course that we in Public Works and CMLP jointly participate in and train our newer employees on safe operation of chainsaws.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, that this is an aside, but one of the things you do is at a stump, I think you actually put the chain in to see it get kicked out. So everybody goes through that experience. Well, one of my neighbors came by and told me that there was some artwork going on back there. She thought it was an art project.
Oh, I haven't gone to look. Maybe they've gotten creative with the stuff. I like it. Yeah, that would be nice.
I can show you, it's not too far from your office back there. All right, thank you.
Absolutely. That's all I have.
Okay, the update on the stone wall assessment, this. Okay,
Yeah, so
all right,
we'll cover that, yeah.
I'm getting ahead. D2, lot repurchase, Hayward family.
It's a transfer request, so it's actually somewhat basic. Ruth Hayward is the only descendant of a lot that her parents purchased. She owns it. She wants to transfer ownership of that lot to her trust that her lawyer has set up recently.
Yeah,
She is the sole trustee currently of the trust.
yeah,
She just wants it there because she feels better about it. And she may or may not sell the lot back during her lifetime. If she doesn't, her successor trustee or lawyer, Trevor, will then sell it back to the town and the money will go into her estate. That is the plan.
all right, perfect. Okay, now here's a big one. Any questions on that?
So you need to,
Oh, good Lord. We'll need a motion and a second and a vote to agree to lot repurchase.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion to accept the lot transfer request by the Hayward family.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. So, let's take a vote to, what are we gonna do here, to, agree to Hayward family lot repurchase. Okay. Brian Davidson. Aye. Rebecca Purcell.
Aye.
Rod Rydell.
Aye.
Gary Susie.
Aye.
Bill Carroll. Aye. Unanimous. This is a very agreeable group. All right, so now we go on to the next item, D3, update, stone wall assessment. And I think you all probably got this in your,
Yeah.
no, it didn't come in.
that would have been, that was in the packet.
Yeah.
It's just very small.
It's in there, but it's a small one.
Yeah.
8 by 12.
All right, so,
So for the request of the cemetery committee, previous meeting, we allocated some funding, we earmarked some funding out of the FY 22 budget to do an assessment of the stone walls within the cemetery and on cemetery property. So town contracted with Wright Pierce, who is one of the engineering firms that the town's engineering division utilizes for specific projects from time to time. So Wright Pierce, they came to town, they worked with Tish and public works staff to inspect the stone walls. They had previously created an inventory internally. They utilized that, and then they walked and inspected those stone walls throughout the properties. So they put together their findings essentially in this report. They detailed kind of in this, in the scope of their work, what they did, how they based, their condition assessment from good, fair, and poor, defining what those are, and then provided some additional detail and recommendations and things to be aware of when going to do any proposed construction or reconstruction of these stone walls, the town wishes to move forward, and then provide some options and essentially some probable costs based on this construction season's funding and what they're seeing. And finally, it's a very detailed inventory that they did, and they included the location, the type of wall, the length and height of the wall, any special notes that specific to each wall, condition of that, total square feet, and then a recommendation on if it needs any type of repointing, construction, or no action, and also a planning level repair cost. So that's planning level is kind of very early without doing any in-depth, and it's based on kind of current construction and what they're seeing with just a visual inspection and not a more invasive type of inspection. So the total, I think it's a very good report. I've reviewed it, we're going through with our engineering group in some detail. And I think it's a good it'll be a good resource for the department and the committee to use for kind of long-term planning. Obviously, it's not a recommendation that all these walls need to be repaired this year, but it's a tool to utilize to kind of prioritize and pick through and determine, what our priorities are, focus on what those are. If it's to target, a certain number of poor condition and fair condition each year, and try to work our way through until, it's all fixed over a course of, 5, 10, 15 years, whatever it might be for example. It'll be first step is an assessment and kind of go from there. Build it in with kind of the other priorities that, there's a lot of needs in the cemetery. And obviously this is one of them. The committee identified as a priority to the committee.
So I guess the question is, it's a big chunk of money, obviously, so how do you determine which ones get fixed with any money that might be available in the fiscal year? Do you go by poor, or how is that decision made?
So I would look at, go through them and obviously the poorest condition. And I think you also look at like the size and then the risk, right?
Yeah.
Kind of mitigating the risk of like, if a wall were to fail, what does that mean, right? You have a poor condition wall that's 2 feet, tall, and it doesn't actually, it's not a retaining wall, right? If it were to further fall apart, nothing's gonna happen. But you have some walls that are, over 4 feet, more of a kind of structural retaining wall. And if it were to fail, it could be other issues that could affect, abutting properties, things like that. So I think deep diving these kind of and determining which ones, would have the highest risk and what do we need to kind of tackle first. So I think it's a discussion not only with this group, but bring in our the engineers and again, engage the consultants and kind of work through how do we sort these? What is a reasonable amount of money to expect every year or to plan for, to try to get, whether it's a grant externally from the town, a grant within the town, like a CPA or CPC grant, or does, how do we fund it within the annual operating budget, with capital from either the cemetery fund or from perpetual care.
Yeah.
Or does the, does the department and the town look at some type of a bond and just do it all in one, get the money all at once and use perpetual care or another funding source to pay a bond, year after year, something like that. So there's a lot of different options.
Yeah.
So I think not only, you engage, the finance department as well and figure out, what are the funding options and the strategies. And
But the bond has to go for a vote, so.
that's one option, right?
Yeah.
So the other option is, if you say, okay, we're going to target $30,000 a year worth of repairs, and we budget for that every year. Just like headstone restoration, right? There's been a standing practice that the department asks for $10,000 specific for headstone restoration every year, and that's what we target to do. And the committee could do the same and say, okay, well, we want to target another 10,000 for head wall restoration. We do 10,000 or whatever number, and then come up with a plan. If how long will it take to do all of the repairs? And if we fund it at a value every year. So I think it's time, it's quite a long list. So take some time to kind of digest it and take it in, and we can, ask questions, review it, go out, actually, look at it ourselves too. And some of the walls, obviously we've looked at, see them frequently. We're out there working every day. But put together the plan, and there's a lot of options and directions, ways to move forward. So
but at the end of the year, assuming that we don't get any grants or anything like that, how much realistically is there left over to do something like this?
in his budget,
I'm gonna say zero, right?
yeah. I think we had earmarked like $10,000 up to $40,000 worth of what I call capital money in the operating budget for projects, and 10,000 was for this, 10,000 was for Columbarian, and 20,000 was for install restoration. But and obviously this, this assessment did cost some money. We've done some work also and some repointing with highway and grounds crews, and so there's still some money left over to do some more repairs. This fiscal year, and we only have 3 more months left in the fiscal year.
No, I'm just, you and I actually walked these and looked at some. You look at the Melvin Memorial and where she is facing out, if you look to the left, there's the roadway, but then that stone wall, which is listed here as 4, it's at an angle. So, how do we not get into a situation where it falls down, we deal with the crisis, and then we find the money? I don't know the answer.
I think it comes to like capital planning.
Yeah.
We're identifying the needs, we're putting together the data, and we put together a plan on how to fund it. And, to what level does the town and the department want to maintain these walls? Right? Do they want them all in excellent condition immediately? And you fund the whole thing all at once and you do the project at once, or is it, what's an acceptable level of condition for the walls? And that's, the committee needs to kind of, I guess, talk that through and figure out what they want to do and what do they want to funding. And how quickly do you want to make all these repairs and implement all these recommendations? So I think planning ahead, just like any other piece of infrastructure, right? You have roads and that are, on all different levels of conditions around town. And, it costs tens of millions of dollars to repave all at once, and you don't do that, right?
Yeah.
But in a couple $1 million a year, and you eventually get there and you decide you want to have maintained to a certain level, whatever rating that is, and you fund it to that level. So.
Right, and I guess I understand. I don't want to belabor this, but what happened up by Ellen Emerson's house with the beavers dammed that thing up. I mean, the reports didn't they clearly indicate it had to be dealt with, and it wasn't dealt with, and then the project ends up costing so much more.
Right.
So I guess is it our responsibility to try? I mean, the committee's responsibility to try to make a focus attention on these types of things.
Well, I think
Leo, I think Jerry had comments.
Yeah, Leo, I mean, if you want to continue, go ahead, but I do have a question at some point.
Okay, all right. No, I think we, as a committee, have to discuss how we can get a bigger chunk of money to deal with some of these things. And this is a perfect example, that stone wall. But I will finish talking and recognize Jerry.
So my question is, I know we've talked in the past about, in particular, the walls at Old Hill in the vicinity of the Catholic Church.
Yep.
And when we talked, I just kind of in my head had a figure of like $1 million, $1.5 million, and looking at all this detail, it's less than $1 million. I'm wondering is there any sentiment, has anybody subtotaled the amount for those walls at Old Hill, for example? Do those walls, now that we've got kind of detailed assessments for all of the components, does that set of walls deserve priority attention? That's really my question, is does that particular area merit some sort of priority or special attention?
I gotta turn that one over to Aaron. He's getting grilled here today.
I mean, we have the report, right? I think we review the report. We look at that based on everything else. And I mean, I use that. I mean, that's a good example of my comment earlier. You got a stone wall that is in the middle of a field, and if it fails, not as big of an issue. But yeah, that wall, and if it were to fail, it falls into the sidewalk and into a public right of way, right? So I would say that would be a location that, I would recommend elevating that as a priority. But I think to your question before Jerry spoke to Leo is that, I think the committee would be charged with setting the priorities and the policy, and then the staff would then work on putting together the information on what it would take to implement those priority plans, right? We could do the work on, well, here's the funding sources, here are the choices, here are the directions we could go. This is what it would cost. This would be the amount of effort that it would take, things like that.
Yeah, okay, good.
Leo, I have a quick comment and a question. So Aaron, first of all, a request, please would you circulate the entire report to the committee?
I think the report is in the packet.
That's it? There's no text that goes along with the spreadsheet?
Yeah, so if you open the packet.
Yeah, no, I see the packet. So then could you send the spreadsheet as an Excel spreadsheet, or that'd be great.
Yep.
Okay, that's a first request. Second comment, Leo, but I think it would be a terrific thing for us as a committee to work on obtaining funding, whether it's for a significant slug of this work or all of it. I think that's a good thing for us to do, and I'm happy to volunteer my efforts to help do that. So I'll put some chips on the table for that. The third thing is, Aaron, in terms of impact of failure, are you just going to add another column to this spreadsheet and talk about what the impact of failure are, sort of the red letter stone walls that would be the highest priority in each of these groups?
We can discuss that. I mean, I'd be happy to meet with you and go over the details of that.
Yeah, I think for us to, I mean, it would be very interesting to see if, for example, the Old Hill Burying Ground, I just did it, back of the envelope here, it's $160,000 to $180,000. That's eminently, achievable by a CPA grant. So that's the sort of thing that, and if it turns out that there are 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 high impact walls in that area, impact of failure, it kind of makes it an easy sell for the granting agency. So it'd be good to know about that sort of thing. And
we kind of, this was just kind of a visual observation. I mean, I wonder if we should come up with 4 or 5 critical walls that need more inspection, because I mean, we're basing these numbers, but really it's just an inspection. I don't know.
Yeah, Brian, I agree with you. It's just that I think every single one of these needs to be repaired. So it's really a question of tactics, right? So we can, we might want to spend departmental operating budget on doing the increased visual inspection, but whether there's more or not, I mean, we put in a 50% overage on, the damage that is not seen, right? With every renovation, as soon as you start taking things down, you find stuff that is going to really need to be repaired. So if the estimate here is $180,000 for Old Hill Burying Ground, you put in a request for $275,000. You budget it in and get on with getting the money. We'd be in a great position if we, you got the money and found out we only needed $250,000. I think everybody'd be happy to give it back or apply it to the next grant proposal, whichever.
Well, I will say too, I think with the 250th coming up, I think the town is especially looking at the center of town and looking for projects to spend money on, to address, to make it look good for that big celebration. So it may be an appropriate time to approach this project.
Yeah.
Well, it might actually be a little late. It's 3 years, right? And this takes a little bit of time to get through all this, I imagine. Well,
but I do want to say this is a great start.
Yeah.
And thank you.
No, it's great. Yeah.
Cemetery.
Leo, whether it's too late or not, I mean, it's got to get fixed. So we might as well get going with it, right?
I agree 100%. I just have one last question for Aaron. I'm not trying to put you on the hot seat, but this is a contractor that has worked for the town for some time.
Correct.
What's the track record show on the difference between what they say it'll cost and what it actually ends up costing?
I can't.
10% off?
So I don't know those numbers with me in front of me right now,
Right.
Leo, but I can get that information and solve with you.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to know, because if they're 10% off, that's not too bad in my opinion. But if it ends up costing twice what it originally estimated, then that doesn't work, obviously. So that's pretty good information to know. I imagine the town keeps them because they have a good track record. That would be my guess. Or just check up on that. Okay, any other discussion on the walls? Thanks, Aaron. This is great, and we seem to be moving in the right direction on this one. Okay, now D4, an update from the Columbarian Subcommittee. Jerry, are you the chair of the subcommittee, or prior to you? Or
We could both speak.
I recognize Jerry as our senior member on that.
Okay.
I'll throw it
Skillfully
there.
done. See that? Skillfully done.
No, so we recently met, our minutes are in the package, and I would say at this point, looking toward the summer, it's time to start playing around with design concepts and materials and textures and colors and things. The focus has been on layout and engineering challenges and, that sort of stuff. So it's moving along, and it's going to get pretty exciting, and we're going to have some things to show and talk about.
Yeah, I'll just add on, I think, we're gonna meet with Wright Pierce the end of April to discuss a little bit more about the constructions and designs and what may fit there, and that they may have some great recommendations to kind of subcontract out to designers and builders of Columbarian. So they'll be a great asset to our subcommittee. So I think end of April, I think is when we were kind of scheduling to meet with them.
Yeah, and thanks for mentioning that, Brian, because Aaron has really helped identify some different pathways to accomplish what we want to accomplish. And that's an exciting part of this project for me. I have no experience in this kind of stuff, so it's fun to watch.
Great. So good. Moving forward. Once again, we're moving in the right direction. Now, we got a little conundrum here. D5, warrant article discussion, Articles 46 and 47. Discussion, possible vote if committee decides to take a position. So, do we want to just discuss this amongst ourselves now, or do we want to have Mr. Galis speak? How do we handle it?
So I will say that so it's on here because at the last committee meeting, the committee wanted to be able to discuss it again a little bit further. I think there's been some, both of these articles are relative to the Formatory Branch Trail that abuts the cemetery property. That's what was of concern. I know that since our last meeting, I think the town of Bedford did take some votes on the action that the town was going to take and on the construction in the town of Bedford. From what I understand, there was a vote for approved funding, but a vote that did not approve the project moving forward. So
Yeah.
That's what I've heard. I don't have the exact details on it. That's all I have to kind of really offer on that.
Yeah, I heard the exact same thing, that they got the funding and then withdraw through the request. So I don't know whether that means it's just the war is over or it's just battle place. I don't know how exactly to process that data. And plus, I haven't read it anywhere. It says a person told me that this is what happened. So I don't know if anybody here can confirm what happened in the Bedford meeting. No. All right. Should we?
Oh, I see, Mr. Marcus.
Yeah, Mr. Galius, would you like to comment?
Yes, Mark Galis, 62 Prescott Road. Thank you. With regard to Bedford, my understanding is the following, that there were 2 or 3 articles on their town meeting on the 28th and 29th of March that had a relationship to the project that Bedford had a consultant come through and process through to 100% plan to VHB Consulting, I guess. And they had 100% plan submitted to the Massachusetts Department of Transportation for a 12-foot wide asphalt paved path with 3 feet of gravel on either side for walkers or hikers. And this was designed to come all the way to Route 62, go under Route 62 with a new tunnel there, 200 feet towards the Concord line, 800 feet short of the Concord line, and loop back to a sidewalk in Bedford for ADA compliance. The votes at the town meeting, there was a $1.5 million request from their community preservation funds, and that required a simple majority, and that was voted favorably, about 60-40. However, those funds were for taking of land and easements to enable the construction of this wide trail. And that required a 2/3 vote to authorize their select board to actually implement those eminent domain taking of lands and easements to allow the construction of the trail as designed and submitted to the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. So that vote needed 2/3 and that failed. There was a third item that came up the next day where a certain amount of funds, I forget what it was, 1.6 million or something, included some not upfront specified portion that was also a contribution to what needed to be done for implementation of that plan in Bedford. And that also failed to get the 2/3 requirement, I think. So there are a number of things that have set it back. I believe that, ironically, tonight, the Bedford Bicycle Advisory Committee is meeting to regroup and find out how to move forward. So, you know, it's stalled, but it's not gone forever. There are people who want it and people who don't want it in Bedford. I just adding that information, best of my knowledge. By the way, the Bedford Citizen newspaper has information about these things, recaps of meetings and stuff, and you can easily get that online.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, this is great that you're following this so closely. I have a question for you, and that is, as far as the trail, the reformatory trail, would Concord also need to do seizure of land through eminent domain if they were to pursue the bicycle trail? Are you aware of that situation in Concord too?
I do not have that information. I was told I haven't researched all the information about the ownership. I was told by one member of town staff that one would, in order to go into that, one would have to actually go to the Registry of Deeds and sort through all the history of what happened. And so I don't know that. I do know that the portion of the trail, existing usable walking and biking trail that goes from Monument Street over to Lowell Road is actually goes through an area that is Natural Resources Commission conservation land. And the portion that goes right by Concord Lumber as it goes out to Lowell Road gets very narrow. I mean, it gets down to like 5 feet or something, because I believe the original railway went through the lumberyard, or the lumberyard was built around it. So, and there's a house adjacent to that. So certainly in that area, if you were going to, carve out something 30 feet wide to put a 12-foot trail and clear trees, something would have to be done, or traffic would have, bike traffic or whatever would have to be routed onto Monument Street. So I don't, my answer is I don't know, but that doesn't mean, it isn't true.
Okay. Thank you very much for this research work you've done, making us aware of what happened in Bedford. So thank you. And if there are any other comments on this or discussion?
Well, I mean, I think kind of the issue in front of us is, do we as a committee want to either support, remain neutral, or not support an article? And, and so I think we could have a discussion of whether or not we wanted to support these two articles, because they involve the reformatory branch, which then run toward right across our border. And we may not want to take any action on that, but so, I mean, I don't know, I'm happy to maybe just kind of give my thoughts. I think we should probably take each warrant article separately and to discuss it. And so I would say, the first one is this feasibility study, which is Article 46.
Yeah.
And, I think that, as I look at it, trying not to look at it as an individual, but what's the best for the cemetery, since that's our responsibility. Having had, a number of bicycle issues in the past in the cemetery, I think we're all sensitive to potentially adding to the bicycle pressure in the cemetery. I think Article 46, although it doesn't necessarily specifically state that, and I don't think the petitioner, by his comments, from what I've heard from his different public meetings, necessarily is saying that it certainly could lead to that. And so since there's a likelihood that that feasible study could, in conjunction with the information we receive, from Bedford, lead to a, potential high-speed bike path. I mean, I think personally, I would say that the cemetery committee should not support Article 46. So that makes sense. Yeah, and I'm happy to yield the floor to any other.
Anyone else have a comment they'd like to make about it? Jerry?
While my colleague from the other side of Concord makes a valid point, I mean, it's money for us. Personally, I wouldn't say one way or the other, but I'd point out that it's money for a study. And the study could very well reveal that, like, oh my goodness, trying to, widen this thing, et cetera, is going to be a mess. My thoughts when Mr. Gallos was speaking is like, it's a can of worms, when you start going to the registry of deeds to look at. So long story short, I'm not specifically concerned because this is money only for a study, and the results of the study could be very favorable to kind of what we're interested in. I yield the floor. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else care to make a comment? I see Mr. Rydell, he's looking down. I'm
Refreshing my memory.
No, Leo, I will just comment in the section D6 on the follow-up items you assigned me from the previous meeting. That's all.
All right.
I'm just checking my notes.
So, Brian, how do you want to move this forward? What do you want to do?
Well, I mean, I don't know if we can make a motion. I mean, we can make a motion to, well, you know what? So I will make a motion and then we can have a vote. And if we don't vote it, then it doesn't move forward. And I think that's quite okay. Yeah. Are people comfortable with that as a?
Yeah,
Sure.
I'm just, if I may, I'm curious about one thing here. Article 47 depends on Article 46, right?
No, I think they're independent, independent articles of each other.
But then Article 46 would be addressing what Article 47 wants to do, or am I backwards again?
I think 46 is just a feasible study to see what is possible, what could happen at the reformatory grant. I think Article 47 is saying, that to basically keep the a natural state,
The way it is.
the way it is.
Okay.
I've seen, I don't know if you want to go before the month, but I've seen we've raised this many times.
Yeah.
Let's make a motion and vote.
If you care to comment again. Your hand is raised.
Thank you very much. Yes, I just want to say that they're really, in my mind anyway, independent articles, and mine is just to say there's a lot of value to the trail it is, and that it goes through rare species habitat. It's used by and loved by a lot of people. So my wife and I were thinking of putting some kind of article like that before we even heard that would be on Article 46. So they're independent, and Article 47 is an advisory article. It's not asking for money. It's not regulating anything. It's just an advisory recommendation. Thank you.
So this refers just to the reformatory trail.
Just for the reformatory trail, the feasibility study, just for the reformatory trail to see what options there could be. And I think, a lot of people think one of those options could be an expansion of the trail to support a bike trail, but it may not as well. It's really just a feasibility study to see what
It just
would
seems like
be
$75,000. I mean, in today's world, I guess it's not so much money, but my feeling is if we're not going to be doing this anyway, why pay $75,000 to confirm that?
Yeah.
And that's just where my think is coming from.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rebecca. That's, my thoughts on this are I go out buzz that trail every day when I'm here, and I like it the way it is. I don't see the need to pave it, and I'm afraid that if we pave it, it's just going to attract more traffic to a place where we probably don't want to have it. So, if it were up to me, I would not want that thing paved. So the question is, how does this feasibility study work into that? If there's a feasibility study, as Jerry says, that comes back and says, this isn't gonna work for these reasons, then good. But if the feasibility comes back and says, this is great, let's start tomorrow, then that's a different set of circumstances. And I think it all comes down to who picks the consultant to help them with this. And so that's our conundrum. Do we want to, it just seems to me that that Bedford made a pretty profound decision on this, and I'm not sure we need to do anything right away to do that. It's like, yeah, I shouldn't say this, but it's like nothing's going to happen right away, because much of what I think this bicycle group was hinging their thoughts on was that Bedford completes this, and then we are the last section until it gets to the river.
Well, I think people have shared in the community that perhaps a feasibility study is not necessary, that there are other mechanisms and other ways to have a discussion about what that trail would look like, or improvements. I think people have come forward and said there are certain places on the trail that do need improvements, drainage and whatnot, and I don't think many people are against that, but they just, but some people feel as though the feasibility study is kind of an overkill. It's, to your point, Leo, depending on who you pick to do the feasibility study, could be a driver to a particular result.
Yeah. So we're in an impasse here. What do you want?
Well, no, well, I mean, to clear the issue, I could make the motion. If there's no second, then we just don't vote, and we just don't take a position on it, But if people wanted the second and take a position on it to not support that article, basically it just goes into the record. The community knows that the cemetery committee doesn't support that, or we could somebody could make a motion to be neutral, or somebody could make a motion to be favored.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that the cemetery committee take no position and say nothing about either of these warrant articles. Anybody say?
So have a second.
I second the motion.
Okay. Now, we got Brian Davison. Do you agree that his idea that we do nothing, right?
Not take a position.
Not take position is the right thing to do. Yes or no?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Rebecca Purcell.
Aye.
Rod Rydell.
Aye.
Jerry Susie.
Aye.
Leo Carroll. Aye. Okay. So we dodged that bullet for another year. Okay. Now number 47. You want to give us a brief on that, or?
Well, I mean, I think we just had a
We
discussion.
just did.
So I mean, I think, why don't we make it, did the motion, Jerry, did you put 46 and 47 into that?
46 and 47.
Okay, so I think we've dealt with.
Okay. All right.
We're not going to take a position on either one of these.
All right. Sounds good. D6, committee members' comments relative to issues contained in this agenda or feedback received from residents since the last meeting. No vote needed, but we need to discuss it, I think. Does anybody have comments?
I just raised that, we had that old mill, or the Windmill Hill kind of building last year.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think the committee got noticed because the notice went to the town, but if people want to look, I think one of our abutters, 37 Lexington Road, is going to be doing a construction project, and the information's on the historical commission, not the historical district commission.
I'm sorry, district.
Yeah, thank you. And so if people want to see the designs, it looks lovely, but just so I don't know if we want to address it at our next meeting or if we don't want to address it, but just so last time we got kind of caught, we had to do 2 meetings on that Windmill Hill one. So I think I don't think anybody will have any issues with it, but just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention so that they could look at the project.
And what is, can you give us a summary of what the project is?
Yeah, so 37 Lexington Road is, and I think this is a Concord Arts,
Oh, Concord
Society.
Arts Association?
Yes,
Or what they used to be.
yeah, so
They're
it's
Concord
a,
Arts now.
it's kind of that Concord Arts,
Yeah.
white building, so they have classrooms and some offices in the rear of that building. They'll be taking those down, as I understand it, and then building what looks akin to a large barn type structure on the back of it, in which will have classroom space and I think additional offices. And the door, entry door will be towards, I mean, we're talking about the old burial hill, and it's just a very small section of the old burial hill, but we are in the butter, so just bringing it up. But if you look at the pictures, it looks fantastic, and it's passed the Historic Districts Commission, which is a very, people are very, they're very particular that it matches and looks good. So I think that, again, just bringing it to attention just so we can have it addressed and people don't say that.
I see, they don't have that, well, they have a space in the back, but I didn't think it was big enough for, I mean, it must be big enough then if they were going to accept the plan.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the specifics off my top. I do think they're going to be removing, I think there is an addition that they had built, I don't know, in the 50s or 60s.
Yeah,
So I think they are removing a little piece of that and then replacing it.
okay.
With really cool.
And you say the plans are on the website for Historic District?
Yes,
Okay.
37.
Yeah,
But it looks, I mean, my personal opinion, it looks super lovely, looks super terrific. I can't imagine anybody having it.
This is Debbie, has anybody seen, as if you could miss it, the house that went up behind the fence that caused this whole brouhaha last year? Have you seen the house that's got up behind it? It's towering.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's worse than the fence in my book, but not that we have any control.
Yeah. We had 2 days, 2 meetings worth of discussions on it, and
No, I was.
unfortunately, yeah,
That
that's right.
was before I came on committee, but I was part of that. session.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a big house.
It's huge, and this towers over that fence they put up. I will give them credit for putting the greenery, as it were, along there, like they said.
Yeah.
That did soften it, but watch.
I'm hoping once the finished product is there, maybe it won't be.
Yeah, but when you don't see the clean end of it.
Yes, may help, and the porta potty.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gosh.
Yeah, nice-
oh, well,
nice
Yeah.
addition.
sorry.
Yeah. Well, but I gotta say this, it was obviously done within the town construction limitations, so forth, they held permits and everything. I don't think there's anything we could have done about it, except say that we don't like it. I was not gonna stop it.
Well, it's behind us.
It is. As they say, it is what it is. Okay, are there other committee member comments?
Yes.
Yes. Rod, right now.
I have 2 topics to quickly discuss with the committee. One is a follow-up. In the last meeting, at the end of the meeting, our committee chairman assigned me to follow up with Delia Kay regarding the reformatory branch trail map that was being distributed in hard copy at the Concord Visitor Center. And I did, and alerted Delia that the 2015 version of the trail map was still being distributed by the Visitor Center, asked her if there were printed copies of the 2021 updated version, which has the language that the committee had worked on. And the answer was yes, and asked her to make sure that that gets distributed to the Visitor Center. So she's going to follow up on that, and I'll keep checking on the Visitor Center and keep reminding her until I can see it there. And I also want to find out if there's any other place in town where that trail map is distributed, and I'll follow up on that. So Leo, you assigned it and I did it.
God bless you.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Okay, wait a minute, there's more.
Good Lord.
I took advantage of this opportunity and told Delia that there were many reformatory branch trail maps, all which mentioned bicycling on them, except the ones that were published in Concord. And furthermore, I pointed out to Delia that one of the trail maps actually had explicit language that said that bikes are not permitted on trails in the Great Meadows area, period. It's not permitted. So I asked Delia, as the head person of our trails in Concord, what would it take to add language restricting the use of bicycles in the trails that that go through Sleepy Hollow, whether it's telling people to walk their bikes or that the bicycles are not permitted on the paths. And she said it would require a vote by the cemetery committee, which would then be communicated to her and her department, and they would so move and add the language. So if anyone wants to do anything about this in marking up a trail map that's published by the town, we can do that. I'm not proposing we discuss it tonight, but I am pointing out that there is a route to achieving an action plan. And if this committee does that and the town revises the trail map, I will volunteer to send that information to all the other people that write trail maps on the reformatory trail branch and ask them to add that information to their maps that are outside the town. So that's the update and the follow-up on the assignment that I received from Leo. That's the first thing, okay? Second item, could you possibly show the two-page PDF that I sent to you? I just want to give everybody a quick update on ground cover restoration.
Give it a try. Hold on one second.
Thank you. So I just want to remind everyone that we'd already approved and thank everybody for voting for the 2022 ground cover, repair projects, which are identified in green on the map. And also remind everyone that we did, Tish and Aaron and the department did 3 major ground cover repair efforts in 2021. We need to focus on making sure that those succeed. I'd like to focus on the area that's listed here as 21-3. It's near the Melvin grave sites. It's near Author's Gate. It's on Glade Avenue, and there's a picture on the next slide. So could we just have the next page, please, Justin?
Hold on. Working on it. There you go.
Thank you. This is the center area by the granite steps. Regrettably, all the efforts that Tish supervised and made last year have not succeeded in restoring the ground cover. There are 2 blocks of space on either side of the steps. They're approximately 8 by 5 feet. They're 40 square feet. I'd just like to let the committee know that for the May meeting, in preparation for the May meeting, I'm going to work with Aaron and Tish to come up with a very specific action plan to test some alternative ground covers in these 2 areas. I'm picking something which is well-defined, small, and highly focused as a way of trying to make some progress in evaluating some alternative ground covers in an area that really is sort of one of the first things that people see when they walk in from Author's Gate. So that's the update, and I will have a specific proposal that I'll have worked out with Tish and Aaron and colleagues in time for the May meeting.
Well, thank you. That's really good. And I will say that if when I go on my walks, it looks good right now. You'll see that the grass is coming up in a number of places, but I think the real test is around August when the sun's up, but.
Yeah, Leo, this area does not look good. This
Yeah, no,
picture was taken last Saturday. And this is unlike the other areas where remediation was performed. There's grass coming up, but these areas have really, they've taken a beating over the winter.
No, I agree with you 100%. And I was about to say that this particular area has pretty severe surface erosion. And if you look off to the right of this picture, that's a pretty substantial gully. And so despite the best efforts to do it the way that always seems to have worked in the past, it's not working now. And so the angle of this gradation, calls for another type of plant to be there. And I think we might see that also in the other two spots later on in the summer, but I agree with you 100%. This is clearly the most important to deal with and deal with as quickly as possible, because we're just seeing the work being done and then it's being eroded away. So it's kind of throwing money away.
Yep. So that's an area of focus and will be presented for committee discussion and approval at the next meeting.
Good.
That's
Thank
it.
you very much. Now, going back to, I'm probably shooting myself in the foot here because you guys want to get out of here, but your first point follow-up on the trail map, do we need to take a vote on that or?
No, I think it's early. I think people need to, discuss. There's nothing on the trail map. The town has published the 2021 trail map. We just need to make sure that printed versions are replacing all the old obsolete versions. And then it's really, I'm not proposing it for today. I let people think about this and discuss it among themselves and bring it back. And there's no new, I'm not proposing making a motion at this time. What I am telling everyone on the committee is that there is a way to explicitly deal with bicycles in the Sleepy Hollow on the paths that is available to us that could be put into the trail maps that so many people take when they visit the town. So
Can I just
Gary, yeah.
I was just gonna mention, a couple members may not be aware, but the previous board under the previous chair, we actually did have a vote at a summer meeting, and it was a vote to ban bicycles in the cemetery, and the vote failed 3-2. But it was the result of a pretty intense ongoing discussion, and yeah, this is something we need to continue discussing. And I certainly appreciate the work you did in digging up all the details about these maps.
Oh, you're welcome, Jerry.
Yeah.
No worries.
Then should we have this as a discussion item at our next meeting yeah, so let's do that. Let's have Justine put that down as a discussion item for our next meeting. So everybody is prepared to share their thoughts on what we should do about this.
I had a comment. So I would, to Jerry's comment, yes, there was a vote at a previous meeting a couple years ago. And I would invite, I'm just check the town website under the cemetery committee page under previous meetings. There are the minutes from all of those meetings and discussion that are posted, and invite folks to read those, especially if we're going to have a discussion maybe at a future meeting. There's a lot of discussions that were had in 2020 and 2021 regarding bicycle usage in the cemetery and on direct abutting properties that would be good to maybe refresh ahead of next month's discussion.
Good.
That's just a recommendation. And I'm happy to, and if any committee members want to reach out to department staff directly, we can pull those together and send those directly if you have trouble on the website.
Could I just get a clarification? When you say paths, do you mean all paved and unpaved, or are you just talking about the trails that are kind of through the more swamp area?
I'm talking about the trails that go through Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, not the paved pathways that we can, those are the ones where, as my understanding, they're the ones where erosion has occurred most and where we're at the most risk of people cycling over grave sites, over graves, as they leave those paths and then move on to the paved area. So, yeah, I mean, this is a topic that we could discuss. You know, would I want to see in the Knolls somebody's child not, you know, prevented from cycling around the circular, you know, path, you know, the circular drive around the cemetery? And frankly, I wouldn't, but I definitely don't want to see a kid cycling over the graves, you know, going up the hill on the knoll and coming down. And I just don't think that that's appropriate.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think I was here as well as Jerry and Brian too. I think the discussion and the vote was on no bicycle at all in the cemetery. I think that's, but let's review that. So Aaron,
Sure.
let's have that in the package.
Yeah.
If possible. A summation of. Now, I don't want to give you more work you already have.
No, that's fine.
No,
So,
that's
so I
fine.
mean, there are quite there's a number of, we, at previous meetings in 2020 and 2021, we had a number of meetings where we discussed bicycle usage in the
Yeah.
cemeteries. So those are summarized and captured in all those meeting minutes.
You okay?
So, they're all on the town website. And again, I'm happy to send those directly to committee members if you need, if you want those, but,
Yeah, I think.
reach out to me directly, but they're on the town, I just checked the town website, they're all posted there, so,
Yeah, okay.
This is under cemetery committee?
correct. Go to the
Okay.
cemetery committee
Alright.
webpage and look at previous meeting
Yeah,
agendas and minutes page,
Okay.
that they're all posted there, you can open them,
and any particular ones to be looking at, or was
All-
it just
a
all?
lot of them.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
say, the fall, so it was the fall of 2019,
Mhm.
the winter of 2020, continuing on into early 2021. Almost every meeting we discussed, I think I just, every meeting we had, we discussed some type of bicycle usage, either in the cemetery or on the Through Branch Trail. There's some discussion.
Okay, so how do we get to the point where we make a decision and don't discuss it again? So I guess we'll review what the previous committees have done, then come up with what we want to do.
So, yeah, and I would say that there's a lot of discussion, and I think that, you know, from an operations and department standpoint, the committee ultimately decided on installing the signs
Yeah,
that we put out
Yeah.
a few months ago.
Yeah.
That was the action item that resulted of all those discussions, was installation of those signs.
And the maps where
Yeah,
some
the update,
trails were
yeah,
taken out,
yeah.
as well as the notice that you saw, Rod, on those.
Yeah.
maps.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those were the action.
well, Mr. Rydell, thank you very much for bringing this to the committee's attention. And we'll talk about it at the next meeting. And are there any more committee member comments? If not, we'll move on to D7, public comments. Mr. Galis.
Thank you. I want to thank the committee for all its work. I just want to tell you, I'm fine with the vote on the articles. My purpose in coming here was not to lobby one way or the other, but to be available to provide information or answer questions. I'm not sufficiently knowledgeable about all the pros and cons, but I do think that if there are problems with stone walls on the old hill, it might or might not be useful to think about trying to get the historical commission or the economic vitality or the business community or something to say, wouldn't it be a terrible thing if in the upcoming celebrations we had a collapse of a wall on a sidewalk right in the middle of the town, and kind of raise it to a high priority. I'm sure different groups compete for the same pools of money, but I also think some citizens might step in too. So, I would pitch in a small way, because I think that's super important. And there, I don't know if it would affect it, but there might even be more foot traffic on top of that wall in certain, in certain areas. If there's going to be crowds brought to Concord from all over, that's not the way you want to be on the news. One last thing, another 2 cents worth in terms of that site for experimenting with the ground cover. That sounds great. But as far as seeing that gully coming down one side, starting pretty high on the slope, I wonder if anything has changed in a negative fashion in terms of the interception of rain by shrubbery or trees or absorption into the ground above that. So just in that particular site, when I see it, it might be worth also, thinking about how the water comes into the top of that gully on that site. So that's all. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let me just respond, Mark. This is Rod Riddell. Thank you for your comment. You're absolutely right. We've had previous meetings where we've discussed that you have to look from the highest point. The problem comes downhill, and all the areas that we've identified areas sort of above the section that requires that the solution to those problems requires different plants. We'll try and address it in terms of putting some kind of a barricade uphill and at least to divert the water away from the area that we're trying to remediate. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Just one thing there too. I mean, you can ask, people who are experts in that, but, bushes and trees and things evergreens can intercept the rain so that it sort of doesn't, if there's a sudden downpour, it doesn't all come at once. And so there's, that uphill treatment is obviously important. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Okay. Any more public comments?
Is Linda gonna talk to Linda?
Linda, did you want to speak to the committee?
Another good meeting. I know you want to adjourn. Thanks, everyone, for what you're doing.
Well, God bless you. How many of these you have to sit through?
Oh,
Well, thank you very much for attending. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
And I second it.
Okay, let's do a roll call. Brian Davidson.
Aye.
Rebecca Purcell.
Aye.
Rod Rydell.
Aye.
Jerry Susie.
Aye.
Leo Carroll. Aye. So now the mass is ended. Thank you very much.